It was Rainer who initially came up with the idea for the project, based on his many years of experience in remastering for Deutsche Grammophon.
For the CD series The Originals, which was produced in the 90s, the analog 4, 8 or 16-track tapes were used to create high-quality CD remasterings at a sample rate of 44.1 kHz and a resolution of 16 bits.
Rainer made many of these remasterings himself and therefore knew that the DG archive was full of original analog tapes, not just copies, but master tapes.
In the 2010s, Universal Music Japan focused on high-quality remasterings for SRCD and commissioned EBS to produce these from the multitrack tapes as well, this time in high resolution.
During the same time, vinyl re-emerged on the consumer market. Clients with new high-end productions on magnetic tape turned to EBS for disc cutting. It quickly became clear that there was a solvent target group for high-quality AAA productions.
I recognized the opportunity to open up new business for our company.
He therefore made the following proposal to DG back in 2017. There is a growing interest in records and analog productions. 2-track recordings could easily be cut directly as AAA versions.
4-track recordings would be suitable for cutting as well.
This had already been implemented for Quadro productions in the past. Rainer was unable to demonstrate it at the time,
but I offered to convert EBS machines accordingly.
6 years later, Johannes Gleim,
Senior Director Heritage of Deutsche Grammophon,
took up Rainer's proposal, contacted him, and developed the idea of purely analog transfers for the company's 125th anniversary. One of the suggestions was original quadraphonic tape recordings, but this was deemed too complicated.
In the end, it was Clemens Trautmann, president of DG, who coined the title The Original Source Series.
This name proved to be ideal. It was catchy, highly recognizable, and open for future expansion. As a result, there was no restriction to 4-track tapes as originally planned.
In a review on the platform Tracking Angle from July 23, author Mark Ward added the crucial phrase, without any intermediate copy, neither analog nor digital.
This edition summed up the core principle of the series. Only analog tapes, consisting of the original recording takes, were to be used. Any copies and downmixes, as well as digital productions, were therefore excluded.
Nevertheless, the concept left room for the original AAA concept from 2017, which had been based on 2-track originals.
Deutsche Grammophon was the first commercial label to produce with magnetic tape, starting from the fall of 1945.
However, they were not the first when stereo technology was introduced in 1956 and did not release their first stereo recordings until 1958.
As early as 1960, DG started experimenting with 3-track recordings, but only a handful of those were ever made. From 1970 onwards, DG began making 4-track recordings with future perspective of possible quadraphonic playback. Some tape boxes bear labels indicating that a series of test cuts were made in the discrete CD4 format.
That same year, however, DG decided against releasing quadraphonic LPs, focusing instead on stereo LPs cut from the 2-track downmixes.
Nevertheless, the label continued to adhere to the concept of immersive sound.
At the beginning of the 1970s, Deutsche Grammophon made a lot of recordings. They owned 6 portable recording systems and ran fixed studios at the Jesus Christuskirche in Berlin, Boston Symphony Hall and Munich's Herkules Saal. And there was a need for several post-production rooms at the Hannover location as well.
An immediate upgrade of the entire infrastructure to multitrack technology would have required an immense investment, and purchasing a small amount of new equipment had already involved considerable costs. For this reason, multitrack technology was mostly used for flagship projects at first, such as large orchestra recordings.
The fact that there was no capacity to carry out every single production in multitrack also answers the frequently asked question about more chamber music releases under Original Source Series. A look at the archive list reveals that most chamber music recordings were still done in 2-track.
After DG had finally decided against Quadro, there was no longer an urgency to carry out all productions in multitrack technology. The archive contains some chamber music recordings on analog 8-track tape as well. A great example are the Messiaen Quatuor pour la fin du temps recordings, which was recorded on 8 tracks, presumably in order to have more freedom in post-production for this complex and unusual instrumentation.
According to definition, both analog 16-track and 2-track productions can be included to the Original Source Series, provided they are suitable and are original master tapes.
When using the 2-track tapes, there is no possibility for remixing, only remastering. Potential improvements in fidelity would therefore stem solely from advances in studio and cutting technology, as well as our personal premise of pushing the boundaries of what is possible. The 2-track catalog contains incredible treasures, and we can only recommend reissuing these as well.
One of you specifically asked about the Tchaikovsky Symphonies 4 through 6 with Evgeny Mariinsky and the Leningrad Philharmonic Orchestra.
Many music lovers describe this recording as spectacular, but from our mastering point of view, this recording is a bit peculiar. It is an early stereo recording with a spectacular stereo image, but a monoplate reverb was used during the recording to enhance the spaciousness. Listen carefully to the ending. The decay suddenly sounds much narrower than the orchestra. It's interesting to notice that artificial reverb was added to the recording, but it only becomes apparent because it is mono.
With multitrack technology, this lag in sound would have been solved much easier.
However, it is not up to us to decide whether any 2-track recordings will be included in the series. The first selection of possible original source candidates comes from Johannes Gleim. He makes suggestions for the repertoire based on an archive list and sends us the original tapes for review. Some tapes were spontaneously added to the original source series. Mahler's Second Symphony with Abbado and the Chicago Symphony Orchestra was only included in batch 8 because we were already working on an SACD remastering for Universal Japan during this time. The tapes were already in our possession and Rainer was very impressed by it.
We are in constant contact with Johannes Gleim. Together we determine which recordings are best suited for the original source series.
However, the final decision lies with DG.
Once we have them, the first thing we do is check whether the tapes can be played back. The DG tapes are in surprisingly good conditions, which is not a given considering their age.
This is because great importance has always been given to storing the tapes properly in an air-conditioned room. Let's talk about some examples that were not as straightforward due to an imperfect condition of the original tapes.
You just listened to Maurice Ravel's Menuet Antique. This damage must have happened while Tonmeister Hans-Peter Schweigmann did a new mix for the CD version in the 1980s. Luckily, these opening bars appear 4 times. I could make a copy and put few seconds in. Here's a second example on Debussy's Nocturnes. This fault must have happened after they already did made a safety copy. This safety copy was archived too, and I spliced few bars in, visible with the blue stickers.
In the case of Karajan Grieg, 4 bars were missing from the 4-track original, likely a splicing error that was only corrected in the 2-track mix at the time. Due to time constraints, the 4-track master was left as it was. We noticed this and patched the missing bars using the 2-track version. So far, there have been 3 instances within the original source series where a short tape copy had to be inserted into the original recording for different reasons. Each case involved just a few seconds of audio. Unfortunately, the 4-track recording of Milstein's Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto was mechanically damaged, starting after an edit about 2 minutes into the second movement until its end. It could not be restored on an analog level, at least not for the original source series. Presumably, the tape material after the edit is of a different type or batch, which has aged poorly and decomposed. In some cases, recordings are put on hold at first. For the production of A Grand Concert of Music with Pinnock, Rainer spent 3 days trying to achieve a convincing sound, but he simply couldn't find a solution that made it truly sexy. However, we might eventually revisit these tapes and come up with a better approach, either through new ideas or new equipment.
This was the case with Kubelik Marvelast. At first, I phoned to Johannes and told him that we could not include this project to the original source series, because the recording contained a clear error. The story, as told by Klaus Siemann and Thomas Murray, goes as follows.
It was a historic moment. The first recording session in Boston using a brand new mixing console was set to take place. Journalists were invited to the control room to experience the quadraphonic mix with their own ears. Before the session, the tape machines were carefully calibrated, which likely required setting the channel routing to mono. In the heat of the moment, however, the routing was not reset before the recording session. It wasn't until the recording session had already started that the technician, Joachim Niss, noticed the room tracks had been recorded in mono. While the direct signal was indeed stereo, it featured a very narrow soundstage as well. This recording error went down in history under the name Royal Mono. Instead of re-recording the faulty takes, they decided to continue recording, hoping the issue could be corrected in post-production. After the first session, the routing problem was fixed and all subsequent takes were technically correct. In the course of the post-production that took place in Hanover, the faulty and correct takes were combined, making the issue clearly audible. In an attempt to mask this recording error, an excessive amount of artificial reverb from an echo chamber was added for the LP release, with a rather mediocre sounding result.
The same approach was attempted for the CD release in the 1980s, but the outcome remained unsatisfying.
Including the recording in the original source series was only made possible after development of new equipment, in this case a custom-built mid-side splitter. Rainer came up with the idea of converting the left and right signal into a mid-side matrix, allowing us to process the side signal independently from the mono component. The stereo width of the direct tracks could be expanded solely by boosting the side signal. Additionally, the signal was filtered and adjusted to minimize the differences between the correct and incorrect takes. Following this approach, we no longer needed to rely on any additional reverb whatsoever.
I marked all the points on the tape where the edits have been made between the incorrectly and correctly recorded takes with a blue sticker and switched between the two settings at the exact moment.
Our mastering console, the Neumann SP79, is specifically designed for this kind of processing. However, the error remains and cannot be fully corrected.
It's clear that the recording will never sound as good as it could have had the recording been done properly from the start. Listen to side 2, time 1 minute 39 with headphones. You will still be able to hear the slight change in sound.
Despite all our efforts, the recording error is still perceptible. We communicated this during the Tracking Angle livestream on YouTube as well. We are therefore somewhat surprised that critics and listeners have not addressed this. At the same time, we're glad that it seems to bother no one as much as it bothers us.